Can India trust China again? That is the billion-dollar question echoing across the world. Not long ago, Indian soldiers clashed with Chinese troops in Galwan. 20 lives were lost. Outrage swept across India. Ties seemed broken beyond repair. And yet, after 7 long years, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is preparing to step onto Chinese soil once more, to meet President Xi Jinping, to reopen conversations many believed had been shut for good. Why now? Why this sudden shift from confrontation to cautious cooperation? Is India walking into a trap or seizing a historic opportunity? For decades, India and China have been uneasy neighbors. On one side, two ancient civilizations with booming populations, rich cultures, and global ambitions. On the other, a bloody history of border wars and betrayals. From the brutal clash of 1962, where India's trust was shattered, to the more recent Galwan Valley standoff, where soldiers fought with bare hands and stones in the icy heights of Ladakh, India has paid in blood for believing in Chinese friendship. So when the Modi government banned over 200 Chinese apps, raised duties on hundreds of imported goods, and blocked investment flows, it seemed India had drawn a hard line. But geopolitics is never permanent. There are no eternal enemies, only shifting interests. The turning point came not from the Himalayas but from Washington. Donald Trump, in his effort to strong-arm India, imposed massive tariffs on Indian exports, sometimes as high as 50%. Trump's justification? That India was buying too much oil from Russia. But the numbers told a different story. While India imported 38% of Russia's crude, China imported 47%. Europe was buying Russian gas in bulk. Even the U.S. itself continued importing Russian fertilizers, palladium, and enriched uranium. So why target India? Because Trump's real focus was not oil, it was agriculture. The United States has long wanted access to India's 99 trillion rupee agricultural sector, a sector that employs 150 million people, half the population of the United States. For decades, Indian governments of every party, BJP and Congress alike, have defended Indian farmers from foreign competition. Tariffs of 70 to 80% on U.S. rice, 30 to 60% on dairy. India protected its farmers even when American produce looked cheaper, because opening the gates would mean disaster. American farms are vast, 188 hectares on average, compared to India's 0.74. They enjoy cheap credit at 3 to 5%, while Indian farmers borrow at crushing rates of 15 to 30%. They use advanced machines, while Indian farms rely on family labor. And on top of all this, American agriculture is heavily subsidized. The result? U.S. milk can land in India at 32 rupees per liter, compared to 50 rupees for Indian milk, a 36% gap that would push Indian farmers into bankruptcy. Without protection, Indian agriculture could collapse. Millions could lose their livelihoods. India could even face dependence on foreign food imports, a chilling reminder of the Bengal famine of 1943. So New Delhi stood firm. India would not bend. But the tariffs still hurt, and they pushed India to look elsewhere, to China. Here lies the paradox. China's wages have soared 79 cents per hour in 2005, over $6 by 2021. Low-cost manufacturing that once made China the factory of the world has become too expensive. That's why companies like Samsung, Foxconn, and Hasbro have shifted production to Vietnam, Bangladesh, and India. China has moved up the value chain, from toys and t-shirts to electric vehicles and advanced batteries. India, meanwhile, is hungry for job-rich, low-cost manufacturing. This is where the China Plus One strategy comes in. Global companies want to diversify beyond China, but not abandon it entirely. India, with its massive workforce and growing domestic market, is a natural partner. Take Xiaomi. The phones are designed in Beijing, but 99% of Xiaomi devices sold in India are assembled in India, by Indian workers using Indian factories. BYD, the Chinese EV giant, could do R&D in China while producing components in India. Both sides gain. China lowers costs, India creates jobs. Together, the elephant and the dragon could serve a market of 2.8 billion people, 34% of the world's population, over 900 million middle-class consumers. An economic fortress powerful enough to challenge any Western bloc. And now, with Trump's tariffs squeezing India and U.S. sanctions hurting China, the two Asian giants suddenly share a problem, and perhaps a solution. But here's the catch. India cannot escape its dependence on the United States. India's IT sector, worth $200 billion, relies heavily on American clients. Half of its exports flow to the U.S. Our daily digital lives, Gmail, WhatsApp, Android, are rooted in American soil. America consumes 40% of India's pharmaceutical exports. It is India's largest market for textiles, chemicals, and gems. And defense cooperation, once negligible, now accounts for 10% of India's imports. Most importantly, the India-US trade relationship is not small. It grew from $20 billion in 2000 to $118 billion in 2024, with India enjoying a $45 billion surplus. This is not a tie India can cut, so New Delhi stands at a crossroads. On one side, an America that is harsh but familiar, a known devil. On the other, a China that promises opportunity but carries the scars of betrayal, an unknown angel. And that is why Narendra Modi's visit to China after 7 years has captured the world's attention. In 2018, Modi last visited Wuhan. Since then, ties soured with the Ladakh standoff and app bans. Now the stage is set again, this time at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. In Beijing, discussions are expected on rare earth minerals, fertilizers, tunnel boring machines, and trade stabilization. Direct flights may resume, visas may be eased. Chinese media is already calling it the elephant and the dragon coming together. For China struggling with post-COVID stagnation and global distrust, India is a market too large to ignore. For India still weathering tariffs from Washington, China offers critical supplies and economic opportunity. But volatility will remain. The West still applies pressure. Russia remains a partner. Japan invests billions. India must balance all these forces. So can India trust China again? On paper, the alliance makes sense. Together, India and China could rewrite global supply chains. Together, they could challenge Western dominance. Together, they could create the most powerful alliance of the 21st century. But history whispers caution. The last time India trusted China, in the spirit of Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai, the betrayal of 1962 followed. Thousands of soldiers died. India was left begging for aid. China remains unpredictable, promising today but dangerous tomorrow. And that is India's great dilemma. Should it side with the known devil or gamble with the unknown angel? Perhaps the answer is neither. Perhaps India's destiny is not to choose, but to balance. To play the game, not as a pawn, but as a grandmaster. After all, chess was born in India. And in the ancient game of chaturanga, survival never came from trusting an opponent. It came from strategy, foresight, and patience. Today, as Modi sets foot in China, the world watches. To ensure that never again will India have to beg, borrow, or break under anyone's power. That is India's challenge. That is India's opportunity. And that is India's move.